Hello and welcome to the False Start Fantasy Podcast with your hosts Cameron and Josh. On this week's episode, we will be talking about Week 5, Waiver Weapons, Bums of the Week, and a special game segment for our hosts. But before that, I get the privilege, dare I say the honor, of getting to introduce our special guest this week. He's 4'8" without the prosthetics and 6'8" with them. Malachi, what are you compensating for?
I wouldn't say I'm compensating for anything. I'm just, well, the height had to go somewhere.
Josh, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine.
Well, with that, let's go ahead and jump into our first matchup of the week. As always, we get to start with my matchup because I make this show doc. This week, I got a win versus Jaden, but I want to throw to Josh first. What in this matchup surprised you, especially as we went into the Monday night game and Matt Collins put up 0 points?
Let's see. What surprised me the most? Well, let's see. Jaden's team, not the greatest still. However, Alvin Kamara finally had a good week, so that was promising. Looking at your team, Justin Jefferson for 30 points once again. Now, that's not completely off brand, but he's had a rough few weeks his last few weeks. It is nice to see him come back, and Drake London. Basically, nothing.
Yeah, on the good side of things, Malachi, talk to me about the Alvin Kamara game.
I mean, this is like that. This is my understanding of the first week that Alvin Kamara has been able to give Jaden points. Well, I mean, because the Kamara points are seem to be consistent, but nothing that has really bothered much.
Yeah, Alvin Kamara putting up 23.4 points is definitely a good week for him. The Saints won 39-32 against definitely a bad Seahawks defense. Would you be looking to start running backs and wide receivers as much as you could against that defense? Malachi?
Oh, sorry. What defense were they again?
The Seahawks
Oh,
defense.
Seahawks.
Someone to target.
I know that yeah, definitely. I know I've been looking at maybe switching out some for if I have a running back going against them.
Yeah, the other thing here, and Josh, I want to throw to you this. Tony Pollard has been really up and down. He got 14.6 points this week against the Los Angeles Rams, who are supposed to be a lot better team than they are. Going into it, it was okay, you definitely can't start Tony Pollard. The Rams front seven is too good, but he put up a good week. Are you still worried about the Rams defense going forward to playing against them, or are they no longer a concern to you?
As far as running backs, I'd be concerned. They still have a good run defense. 11 of Tony Pollard's points came on a single run because he scored a touchdown. That was a 50-yard something touchdown. And for the most part, I don't think Zeke had a great game. Outside of that one touchdown run, Pollard didn't have a great game. So as far as running backs, I'm not too I wouldn't start running back against them unless they're ones that are top tier ones. Receivers, on the other hand, play them. Um, can't remember the cornerback's name right now because I'm pulling a blank, but they really only have the one good cornerback, and after that, it's all mediocre at best.
Yeah, moving on then to our next matchup, Josh versus Brandon. Josh getting a dub, 151.4 points there. Malachi, talk to me. What went well for Josh's team this week?
Josh's wide receiver, Stephon Diggs did pretty good. Both the Bills wide receivers did really good because the Steelers defense just couldn't hold up. But I believe Derrick Henry is at him, the Titans
Yes, Derrick
running
Henry.
back.
Yep.
Yeah, just overall, a lot of his big scores came in and it benefited him.
You forgot to mention my highest score of the week, one, only, Tyler Lockett.
The Seahawks are doing pretty well so far.
Yeah, 27.4. Another great week from Tyler Lockett, leading your team just like you said. But I do want to focus on a down player this week. AJ Brown put up 6.2 points. Start of the year, this guy looked like, okay, he is the only Eagles wide receiver that matters. Suddenly, he's getting outpaced by Devonta Smith in a game that was kind of a shootout, 20-17 against the Cardinals. It was a competitive game to the end. They were throwing the ball, but 6.2 from AJ Brown. Malachi, are you worried about AJ Brown moving forward?
Yeah, that I wouldn't be excited if we lost him, if he went down, because I have the Eagles QB, and the last thing I want is my receivers to go down on that team.
Yeah, Josh. On the other side of this matchup, we see right there Devonta Smith 18.7, so getting 12 and a half more points than AJ Brown. Is this a 1A 1B situation, or hey, Devonta Smith had two better weeks in a row? I doubt it keeps happening.
At this point, I'd still say AJ Brown is the first read. He did have, I'm going to say it was 7 or 8 targets. He just didn't reel a lot of them in. I didn't have a chance of the game, so I couldn't tell if it was just pass breakups or anything like that. Um, it could eventually work its way to a 1A, 1B, but I mean, if the Seahawks are anything to go off of, 1A and 1B can be perfectly fine, and both of them can be a wide receiver one by the end of the season. Easily.
Absolutely. Well, then moving on to our next matchup, we had Malachi, our special guest this week, versus Billy. Billy putting up a good fight, but Malachi leading the league this week in points with 164. Malachi, talk to me. What went well for your team?
Gabe Davis, man, he didn't do a whole lot the second half, but the first half, him getting a 98-yard touchdown followed by a 64-yard touchdown, it put me in such a great starting position early on. And then Jalen Hurts came back after a lower scoring week and got, I believe, his second highest scoring.
Yeah, huge week from Jalen Hurts and Gabe Davis. Christian McCaffrey also being a steady high scorer for your team there. I'm really wanting to see what this team looks like now that their head coach Matt Rule is fired. But on the other side, and I know we cannot talk about him enough, Josh, tell me about Travis Kelce and those four touchdowns.
How do I put this simply? Kelsey is a beast of a man. It's
Absolutely.
clear at this point. I mean, he put up 33 points and he only had 25 receiving yards. It's very unlike Kelsey in most cases, but it just shows he's a beast when he needs to be.
Yeah, I will kind of spin this though. Travis Kelsey getting four touchdowns. Are you worried about the Chiefs not being able to find other red zone targets then? Is he going, if a team can shut him out at the goal line, should the Chiefs be worried about not being able to get production from anyone else?
I'd say no. Mahomes is still, as it stands right now, the greatest QB in the league, in my opinion. Josh Allen does give him a run for his money, I'll admit, but at least as a pure QB, not talking fantasy here, Mahomes is the best QB. He'll find a way. I mean, Clyde's had a lot of touchdowns in the past few weeks, and he somehow finds one of insert 7 receivers here's names for a touchdown eventually. Last week, they just happened to all be Kelsey because the Raiders were like, nah, we don't need to cover this guy in the end zone, and then he made them pay for it.
It was a close game too.
Absolutely. Both teams definitely throwing quite a bit, so definitely benefited the pass catchers there, but really only Kelsey doing well on that Chiefs offense other than Patrick Mahomes. But I will go on to our next matchup here. Ethan versus Bandon, 151 to 120, so pretty good week from both players, but Ethan's keeping that undefeated streak alive to fight with Josh up there, led by his running back, 35.9 points from Leonard Fournette in a 21-15 game. I gotta say that's pretty incredible that he got so many points in a game that there were only three touchdowns scored by Tampa Bay. Josh, tell me about the Tampa Bay offense. We know that Chris Godwin's coming back. Should we be worried at all about Leonard Fournette?
I'd say no. Tom Brady, he is a QB that tends to pump the ball off if no one is open down the field. And that's exactly what happened with Leonard Fournette. He had like 10 receptions, so that's 10 points already as it is. Run a touchdown or two and get some yardage, and voila, you have 35, basically 36. While it might go down a little bit, I would still expect at least a solid, probably 13, 14 points as your floor.
Well, then how about I throw this to you? A hypothetical that I'm sure some players out there are dealing with. Would you rather have Leonard Fournette or J.K. Dobbins rest of season?
If it's a PPR or even a half point PPR, I would say Leonard Fournette still. Like I mentioned earlier, he does like to throw it short to the running back if no one's open downfield. If it's just standard scoring, then I'd take J.K. Dobbins.
All right, and then the other guy I wanted to talk about here is CeeDee Lamb. Malachi, talk to me about how CeeDee Lamb 10.3 points in a game where they won by 12. It was a game that they weren't throwing the ball a ton, but it should have been a game where they needed to because the Rams defensive line was definitely not giving up anything too huge except for the one big play there to Tony Pollard. Are you hoping for Dak to come back sooner, or is the production we're seeing from CeeDee Lamb good, Malachi?
I th- I think this might have just been a down week for CD Lamb. Uh, the Rams aren't doing so hot. I wouldn't say the Cowboys had to worry too much. They probably were. They're probably giving some of the other players some play.
Yeah, it's definitely
Uh,
a good week from the Cowboys. That defense was absolutely crushing it. We'll go on to our next matchup here. We had Kyler versus Preston. Kyler was our guest last week, and Preston made him pay for all the smack talking he was doing on the podcast. 3.4 from AJ Dillon, 8.3 from Jerry Judy, and 1.6 from TJ Hawkinson. Josh, talk to me about the Detroit offense. As we can see, there are three players in this matchup that all were complete busts.
It was one of those at first you're like, okay, Detroit has a good offense. Granted, I'll give them this. New England's still a tough defense, especially in New England, but into it, everyone was like, okay, Lions got this. They're easily the number one offense right now. They are an offensive powerhouse, and their defense can't do anything, and they were definitely humbled. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to watch it, but this shows when they go up against one of their, I wouldn't even say elite, but at least upper tier defenses, they might struggle. And without fully healthy weapons, I'd probably err on the side of caution when starting a Lions player unless you don't have a choice.
Yeah, a lot of interesting players here. Malachi, who is someone who is popping out to you when you look at this matchup?
oof. Probably Eckler or Brown, the Cardinals wide receiver.
Yeah, Marquise Brown, 21.8 points. Definitely a good week from there, despite the fact that the Cardinals lost. And really, the Eagles' defense had shut out some great receivers before this, but they were not able to start Marquise Brown. Really feeling good about that guy week to week. I really think you're seeing the wide receiver one season that you need to from him. We'll have to see what he does with DeAndre Hopkins. But the other guy to talk about here, Ramondre Stevenson had 19 and a half points in a game that was 29-0. And as we know, the backups there, Brandon Bolden is gone, and um, uh, Ty Montgomery is out for the season, and Damian Harris now has an ankle injury, and all these backups on the Patriots roster. Are we going to see a forced workhorse role for Ramondre Stevenson moving forward? I'll throw this one to you, Malachi. I know it's unusual, but he's the only guy left there that has real reps with the first team. Are you excited about that player moving forward?
I mean, I think it would definitely be enjoyable to watch. Uh, Definitely will be being pushed up, most likely. And I definitely would think to expect bigger things from him later this season.
Yeah, absolutely. And Josh, I'm going to throw another question to you that's going to make you feel uncomfortable. Ramondre Stevenson next week or Kenneth Walker?
Mm, let's see. Still go Ramondre. Um, Going to Seahawks, they'll find some way to get someone else involved. Kind of like what you said, Ramondre. There's really no one behind him that's proved anything so far, so I'd still go Ramondre. And right now, especially if they play Zap, whatever the hell his name is, still at QB, Mac Jones isn't ready yet. England's going to have to be forced to run it a little bit more. Those divisions should see a larger work.
Yeah, Seahawks playing the Cardinals and the Patriots playing the Browns, so we'll have to see what that ends up looking like next week. I'll go ahead and move on here to our final matchup of the week, Chris versus Sam. It looked like it was a close matchup going into Monday Night Football, and then Darren Waller decided he was a little sleepy and didn't want to play, and Josh Jacobs took all of his energy to absolutely crush the Chiefs' defense on the ground. 30.3 points there. Malika, I know that you were watching the game. Talk to me about how Josh Jacobs looked. Is this guy a must
Oh,
start every single week now?
I ended up missing the game,
Oh, my bad. I thought for sure you would have watched it.
but
Well,
I can
then I'll
definitely say I'm regretting trading Josh Jacobs.
feeling a little bad there. Josh, I'll throw that one to you then.
Um, Josh Jacobs looks very impressive right now. He's running with more energy than I've ever seen him run with. At this point, he's basically a human wrecking ball. He's definitely not one of those players. If I was a defender, I would want to try get in front of and try to tackle because the odds are you're going to be looking up at the stars. So, Josh Jacobs, unless an injury happens, must start at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. I have the stats right here. Josh Jacobs has 91 rushing attempts. The second on the team is Brandon Bolden with 7. I think that's a workhorse role if I've ever seen one. Absolutely. And Malachi, the other guy who was absolutely phenomenal in this matchup, despite the loss, Josh Allen put up 35 points against the Steelers and got the win there, but was not enough for Sam's team. 35 points. Is this
That
a ceiling, or is this what we should expect from Josh Allen?
I mean, that was I feel like I watched. That was a game I did watch, and it was just a crushing. Just the Steelers defense couldn't hold them. Uh, I wouldn't expect this from Josh Allen every week, but I don't think this will be the peak Josh Allen can score this season.
Yeah, big expectations from that player moving forward. We'll have to see what he does. I'm pretty sure he's the QB1 on the season right now, but we'll see what that means for MVP race later in the season. Well, that concludes it for our matchups of the week. I have right here a picture of our standings. Malachi moving up there to third place. Congratulations.
Thank
Chris
you.
moving up 4 spots all the way to seventh, getting out of that 11th spot. I'm sure he's very happy about that. But right now, two teams 5-0. I don't know when they play each other, but hopefully it's soon. And then a whole lot of teams that are 3 wins or under. And I'm just excited to see what this season becomes.
Yes, I believe me and Ethan play not this week but next week. So we're both undefeated by then. Obviously, barring some kind of miracle, one of us will have a loss.
Definitely
I'm
going to be
going again.
exciting.
Josh is my opponent this week, in fact, and I'm looking forward to this. It's going to be a close one.
Wow, tough 2 weeks for Josh. Going up against third place this week and first place next week. All right, that'll move us on to our next segment, which is, of course,
Bums of the week.
Yeah.
we'll start us off here with Josh, your pick there. Tyler Yucklin. Tyler Conklin.
That's Tyler Conklin, aka Tyler Yucklin. It's worrying as a guy who had been relying on him after drafting Cole Kmet, and Cole Kmet got me 0 points in 2 weeks. For a while there, it looked like I had something solid. When the Jets played Pittsburgh and Zach Wilson came in, okay, he probably won't be getting nowhere near where he was with Joe Flacco, but he might get me 8 points on a week. And then he gets me absolutely. So, goose egg to me, that's an automatic year candidate for Bums of the Week. And, yep, with Tyler Yucklin this time.
Yeah, the next guy on here is Malachi, your pick there, Jared Goff. Jared Goff.
I mean, he's not. He doesn't seem to be super consistent and or a high scorer. And I know Preston has had pretty bad luck with with his QB spots. And yeah, I will admit he did very good in week 4, but just that inconsistency and the Lions not doing too hot this week just kind of made him one of the lowest score QBs.
Yeah, Jared Goff was off to a hot start, leading the league in passing touchdowns with 11, and then the Patriots defense showed the Lions that they were frauds, and it is definitely going to be in their minds going into their bye week this week. We'll have to see what they do coming out of it, as hopefully Jared Goff can have a bounce back game, because I'm sure there's a lot of fantasy managers who lost Trey Lance and maybe drafted Russell Wilson are glad they have a different guy in instead, are going to be depending on him. The last player that we have here is my pick of the week, and that is AJ Dillon. And just to exemplify what we have here with AJ Dillon, I wanted to play a special game for you guys with Aaron Jones or AJ Dillon. So, with that, we're going to go ahead and start it off. I want to know, and we're going to start with Malachi, make you go first. Who has more rushing attempts on the season, Aaron Jones or A.J. Dillon?
Could you remind me what teams they play for?
Yeah, these guys both play for the Green Bay Packers, and we knew that they were going to be a split backfield. We have the established and the very explosive, very good Aaron Jones, who's been with the team for quite a while, is a great friend of Aaron Rodgers, and has been amazing every single year. Been drafted as an RB1, for last few years in a row. Definitely a great player there. And then we have the young upstart A.J. Dillon, who over the last 2 years has really been forcing his way into getting that role from the team, and even took that role from Jamal Williams while he was still a captain for the team. And we're just seeing A.J. Dillon push his way into the team. But I wanted to show how similar these two players are by creating a little game for us. So, Malachi, Aaron Jones or A.J. Dillon, who has more rushing attempts on the season?
I'm going to have to go with my gut here and go Aaron Jones.
Josh?
I will go the opposite. I'm going with the villain himself.
Well, that'll be a point to Josh then, because A.J. Dillon does have more rushing attempts. 63 for A.J. Dillon and 61 for Aaron Jones. The closest of a backfield in the entire NFL, with only 2 carries between them. The next thing I'll go to here, though, is opportunity in targets. So in the receiving game, who's getting more targets? Josh, I'll throw to you this one first. Aaron Jones or A.J. Dillon?
Me, Jones.
I'm going to have to agree with him on that.
Yeah, you guys are both correct there. Aaron Jones with 19 targets compared to A.J. Dillon's 14. And while we can say that these numbers are very close, it's got to be a little disappointing for fantasy managers. They know how bad the wide receivers are, and they know how Robert Tunyon's role is only just now coming back, but that is not a lot of targets, especially when you look at someone like Christian McCaffrey, who is getting an absolute ton every single week and is getting more than those two, absolutely. And even in a non-workhorse role, it is Ramondre Stevenson is getting 16, which is 2 more than A.J. Dillon, and he had a much more split backfield. Now, the next stat that I have here is the red zone targets. If we know they have a split backfield, one player has to be getting the more valuable targets once we get closer to that goal line. So, Malachi, I'll throw this one to you. Who's getting the more valuable targets as we get close to that goal line in the red zone?
I mean, based on based on how you've explained it to me, I would want to go with the guy who's been around the longest, the guy who's probably knows more. So I would again have to go with Jones.
Josh?
Again, I'll go the opposite. Give me the villain.
Ooh, that'll go to Malachi then, tying up the score 2-2, as Aaron Jones right now has 3 red zone targets to A.J. Dillon's 2. So once we get down to that, the targets are not going to the running back very often, but they are very split, 3-2. Which brings us to our last stat here. Josh, red zone attempts. Who's getting the ball handed off to them as we get close to that goal line?
Aaron Jones here.
Malachi?
I guess Dylan.
And Josh takes it back. Aaron Jones does have the more red zone attempts on the ground, 9-8, and it's just shocking to me how similar these two have been in production. But it's not something you're going to be looking forward to because Aaron Jones is outsnapping AJ Dillon by a huge percentage, and when you're looking at these two, you really need to see that the more valuable touches in that red zone are split almost evenly. So if you have AJ Dillon, don't be thinking you need to sell him because he has low snap percentage. You can hold him. Production will come because they are still wanting to use a committee in that backfield. But that does bring us to our next segment here. Josh with his first miss of the season in the waiver weapons. Devontae Parker, 0 points for anyone who listened to Josh. A complete, absolute bust. Embarrassment there from Josh. How are you feeling?
Man, eventually it had to happen. After being right about Geno Smith the previous week and having a super hit, naturally comes the super miss with the thing.
Yeah, so I have a tracker here, and we were correct. Kyler was the first person of the guests to get a hit in the waiver weapons segment, with Randall Cobb putting up a nice amount of points there. And of course, Rachaad White had a good receiving floor and did pretty well himself. But I'll go ahead and move on to this week's waiver weapons. Malachi, talk to us about Jacoby Brissett.
So I was struggling a bit with my choice, and I went for someone who might not be the highest scoring, but I think he is a consistent QB and has a chance to become better than he already is. He's right now mid-rank of the QBs in play, but one thing he has over all the other QBs is that he's been one of what I've seen the most consistent ones throughout the season. He's almost every single week he scored at least 15 points, which may not be your first choice of all, but I know a couple of people in the league are struggling with QBs to get them points at all. And I think if not your starter, I think Jacoby Brissett would be at least a good backup.
Yeah, absolutely. Consistent 15 points is definitely appealing to a lot of players. I'll move on here to a very shocking person who I did not expect to show up in the waiver weapons all season, or really even to be talked about this season. Skylar Thompson out of K-State, now with the Dolphins. Josh, talk to us about him.
So, my man, Skylar Thompson. Disclaimer, I'm a big K-State fan. He went to school at K-State, so that's part of the reason why I chose him. Two, Minnesota is not a great defense. I wouldn't say they're above average or below average. They're kind of like right in that middle tier. I'd say slightly below average, but not by much type of thing. However, last week, Skylar Thompson, he did look bad. Granted, he also got basically put into a game where he wasn't even supposed to be playing at all. So coaches had a hard time adjusting to that. Now he has the full week. Mike McDaniels has even said he is our starter for this week. Even if Teddy Bridgewater is ready, he is the backup this week. So they are going with Skylar Thompson. They like what they've been seeing out of him. He looked great in the preseason. I think now having a week to work with the ones all the time, he should be ready to play.
Yeah, exactly right. Getting the practice with the first team is going to be huge for him. I am definitely hoping for a big week from him. As you know, KU fan here, but I love me some Skylar Thompson, and honestly, K-State football is pretty fun.
I saw some of those plays, and they looked good for basically being his first time on the field.
And yeah, his one interception, his arm got hit. If it wasn't for pass interferences, he probably would have had about 276 yards passing. And one of his touchdowns that he did throw got called back because of a holding. So if it weren't for those penalties and the fact that his arm got hit on one play, would have had a solid outing for a first time playing.
That's for sure.
Now, the last waiver weapon we have of the week is Jerick McKinnon from the Kansas City Chiefs. And if you've been following closely with the Chiefs, you know that they are using a completely fantasy irrelevant running back system with that offense. They're throwing Isaiah Pacheco, they're throwing Jerick McKinnon and Clyde Edwards-Helaire all into the offense at about the same times. You really don't know who's going to be getting the ball when any of the three are out there, and it's just showing that the Chiefs are wanting to use guys for certain situations, but we do not know what those situations are. But we do know that Jerick McKinnon still has the explosiveness, as we got to see against the Raiders this last week. And I wanted to bring up some stats about last year when the Chiefs played the Bills in the playoffs. Jerick McKinnon had 10 rushing attempts, which was 3 more than Clyde Edwards-Helaire, for 24 yards. So averaging only 2.4 yards per carry, getting some of the short down work. Definitely not great there from the run game, but we're hoping to see that go up. But what we did see that was good was Jerick McKinnon had 5 catches for 54 yards. So when they needed someone to go out there and get some definite yardage in the passing game, Jerick McKinnon was the receiver running back that the Chiefs were looking to. And while the Bills defense has taken some hits, I think we're going to need to see some creative packages coming from the Chiefs to be able to make sure that the offense is going to be moving forward without Tyreek Hill, as we've seen so far. Everyone is going to need to eat. Jerick McKinnon is a guy I'm betting on getting a touchdown, and I think will be a good waiver weapon for a lot of people this week. All right, well, that then concludes it for the waiver weapons. We had one mailbag question here, and that was about the Chiefs wide receivers. This is where they're standing right now in PPR. Juju leading the way at wide receiver 50 with 22 catches on 35 targets. And after him, and honestly as well as him, it's not looking good from the Chiefs wide receivers. Josh, talk to us more about that Chiefs offense. I know I just brought up Jerick McKinnon, but talk to us about what the wide receivers are looking like.
If you want the short answer, I'd say right now don't play any of them unless you're forced to. To actually go in depth, the way I'd go about it is if you're looking for a floor play, you'd want to go Juju. If you're looking for a ceiling type of play, you'd probably want to go MVS or maybe Hardman. Those are 2 players that have the greater chance to pull off the big play. We've seen the last few weeks, Mahomes has been airing it out a little bit farther to each one of them on certain plays, so there's always that chance to break one away. However, if you really just want to try to stash someone, I'd stash Sky Moore. He's finally getting some work, and a lot of fans are excited for him. And who knows? I don't think he will be another Tyreek, but he might be an improved version of Mecole Hardman.
Yeah, Malachi, talk to us about Juju there. He's right now leading the team in fantasy points per game at 9.1, but that's definitely not what we were hoping from this player in the season. Malachi, would you consider dropping Juju Smith-Schuster, perhaps for some of the waiver weapons players that we talked about this week?
It really depends on who's going that week. I know this week the Chiefs are going up against the Bills, and if you really need a wide receiver and you have Juju Smith, that you might need to pick up another one. But I personally would not drop him because he's still going to get those throws, and he has to go against Kelsey on that team, and a lot of the time Kelsey gets picked, but I think Juju's definitely still a choice.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last part that I wanted to bring up was Marquez Valdez-Scantling definitely had more targets than Juju and any of the other wide receivers this week, but I just am not seeing the ceiling there from any of these players. I think it's just an offense where everybody's going to eat, and if I am needing another tight end, let's say I have Darren Waller in a league, which I do, and I'm needing another tight end to start this week, I am totally comfortable dropping any of these players to pick someone up because I am just not seeing the path towards any of these guys becoming someone I would want to start each week, and that is what I want to do when I have a bench player on my team, as I want to see the path for them to improve. And these guys definitely are going to need to be able to show something before I'd be able to start them. Well, then the last segment I have here is a special edition of Rank 'em, where we're talking about crackers. Malachi, you're the guest this week. I'll go ahead and let you go first. Rank these 3 crackers.
Well, first I have to say, why are you including goldfish but not whales? Come on.
Whales are just worse goldfish, so
I will vocally fight about that one. Definitely, I'd have to put Cheez-Its up top. Goldfish just barely, and then animal crackers. Just because animal crackers sometimes don't hit as hard.
I have a big thing of animal crackers right next to me, but I'm still gonna put goldfish number 1, and I'm gonna put Cheez-Its number 2. I'm definitely putting animal crackers number 3. Josh, how do you land on these?
I think you had a perfect Cam. Goldfish, Cheez-Its, and last but not least.
Yeah, I definitely like all 3, and I'm happy to snack on those carbs, but I'm gonna stick with those rankings right now. And that'll about conclude it for this week's episode of the Fall Start Fantasy Podcast. Thank you all so much for listening. You can find us on Twitter at @JoshNewshafer and @Cameron's Ego. Malachi, do you have a Twitter? Will you be the first
No, I don't.
guest? Damn it, Malachi. Okay, if you're going to want to find Malachi, you're going to have to go to his personal house. I'm sure you can find his parents somewhere. Go find them, and you'll be able to find Malachi. And you can ask him all the questions you want about fantasy football.
I would not recommend asking me. I'm going to Josh every week.
Well, then there's your middleman. If you want to talk to Josh, is you go and talk to Malachi, I guess.
I'm a good middleman.
Well, then, Josh, do you have anything else to add?
Go Chiefs, screw Bill Mafia.
There we have it. Malachi, anything
You're just
else?
saying that because I like the Bills.
You can like the Bills next week. You can't like the Bills this week. I will edit you out of the podcast. if I knew how to edit.
It was a good week. I think there's going to be a lot of close matches this week, and I'm looking forward to it.
Well, thank you guys so much, or thank you, Malachi, for so much for joining us this week. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We will be back next week before Week 7 begins, so be on the lookout for our next episode so you can be ready before the ball is snapped. Thank you, and goodbye.